All right, well, we've made it to the end of the React lectures. We've covered a lot of content around React and Redux, Create React App. We learned a lot about hooks, the new fancy way of writing React. And I suspect most of what you learned, the majority of it, came from the projects, looking at the solutions that we've written, doing the exercises. Because the syntax of Redux, it does take some getting used to, and the idea of writing your functional components and working with the built-in hooks and writing your own hooks and Redux, it's not the most intuitive thing immediately, but most of the important learning that needs to take place is actually using React and writing applications with it, not just a counter or not just a single component at a time, but a larger app where you have things going on. You've got a database or an API that you're working with. Maybe you have authentication. That's the important stuff. You can write a component in isolation. That's good. Got to start somewhere. But the real learning is writing a larger app with a bunch of components. So hopefully you picked up a lot of stuff from the lectures, but I'm sure you picked up more from the actual exercises and looking at the solution code. Anyway, now what we're going to do is wrap up some of the topics we did not cover. And I'll cover some of the important ones. There's at least 2 built-in hooks that we just didn't talk about that are pretty simple, and they really didn't fit into their own section, but they are worth talking about. But just to recap the basics we've seen, quite a bit. If we were to break it down into a couple different pieces, props, states, components, effects, or really just use effect, there's a lot there that we talked about, React Router, Redux, and within each of these, there's a whole lot that we discussed. And the hooks that we really spent the most time on are use state, use effect. We also covered use context, although there's not as much to discuss there as there is for these 2. But there are additional built-in hooks. You can see them here on the React docs, on the hooks reference, right there, hooks API reference. There are a couple others. And I want to spend some time in this video talking about this first one, use callback. Use callback is a built-in hook that returns a memoized callback. If you haven't heard the term memoization, or to memoize something, it's a term that it's kind of similar to caching. So not rerunning a function or recreating something if it's already been created once, being able to save something for reuse later to speed up or optimize an application. And that's what use callback does for a callback function. So to demonstrate this, I think it makes a lot more sense if you understand the problem that it solves first. Let's say that we have a function that we want to call instead of an effect. So we have use effect, and in that use effect callback, we're executing some function. And the function that we are executing depends on props or states, and because of that, it needs to be listed as a dependency for use effect. If that function is defined inside of the component itself, this can cause big problems. It can cause infinite render loops. So let me just demonstrate this here. I've got a component called numberFact. It uses Axios, it uses useState and useEffect. And in the component, I've got a piece of state called num, another one called fact. Num is going to just be initialized to 42 if we don't pass in a num. And our base URL is the numbersapi.com. Then we set up a piece of state that will store the eventual API results. So this component is going to make an API call to this numbersapi.com using this number, 42, unless you pass in some other number. And we need a use effect in order to make that work. So we're going to call use effect. We pass in a callback in here. And I've already defined a function. So instead of defining my function in use effect, I've decided it's easier, it's nicer, cleaner if I define this function on its own. So I have my async function getFact. That's what I want to call in use effect. So I'm going to call getFact. And I need to pass in some number. And the number I'm going to pass in is just whatever num is. So I do have the ability to change num down here with this input. There's another component called number input, but that's not really what we need to care about right now. What we care about is that I am calling a function getFact from inside of my useEffect callback. Okay, so that's the first bit, but then I'm also supposed to list dependencies. When do I want this to run? And if I try and give it an empty list, it's going to complain. It says, you need to add getFact and num. So we know we need to add num. If num changes, that piece of state, we want to rerun this and call getFact of num. But if getFact changes too, it's just telling us we need to do it. We'll listen to the linter here. We should add getFact as a dependency. But there's a problem. getFact is a function, and it's defined inside of my component. Now what that means is every time my component re-renders, this function is recreated. It's a new function every time. Now it has the same name, it does the same thing, it looks exactly the same, but it's like making a new array every time or a new empty object. Technically, one empty object is not the same as another empty object. One function with the same name that does the same thing is not the same as another function. And what that means is that when my component renders, this function will be recreated. And that means this dependency has changed. getFact has changed. And that means that the component runs again because useEffect is called, or this callback is called getFact changes num. That means we get another render. And when we get another render, we make the function over again. And then this function changes, so there's a dependency that changed, and we end up in this cycle. All because this function is being redeclared over and over and over again every time our component runs, every time it's rendered. And I can demonstrate this to you. It's not going to be very fun for my browser. If I go to localhost, oh boy. Oh, I need to add curly braces here. Okay. So this is what we end up with. I'm console.logging running every time we are making that request. And if I change the value in this input, oh dear, I don't know if you saw that. Let me try again. Oh, there we go. 16 requests in a row, and then I think we hit the rate limit or something happened where it stopped. Not good. We're making a whole bunch of API calls over and over and over. We just want to make one when this number changes or when our function changes. The problem is that our function is changing over and over and over every time our component runs, every time the component re-renders, which it will re-render whenever we call setNum or setFact. Whenever that happens, we get another render. This function is recreated. This dependency has changed, so this effect runs. Then the whole process starts over, and it's this awful loop. Now, if I hover here, I am getting a warning. It says the getFact function makes the dependencies of useEffect hook change on every render. To fix this, wrap the getFact definition into its own useCallback hook. So this is where useCallback comes in. useCallback is going to return a memoized callback. Basically, it's going to make that function one time and not continue to make the function over and over and over. So it's a hook we need to import. It's super easy to use. We just pass in a function and then an array of dependencies that will be used to figure out when the callback should change, if it should ever change.